Hello and welcome to Cruisin' Studios. In this video I will be casting a bronze bear sculpture in lost wax casting process. Here's the first step where I'm going to pour the microcrystalline wax into the mold that I have already created, and we're going to continue on this process back and forth and back and forth. I fill it all the way up, make sure I don't get any air bubbles in there, and it is completely coating the outside diameter of the sculpture that I want to cast. Then I pour all the wax out and let that cool down a little bit, heat up the wax again, and I'll let the wax dry a little bit and get a little hard shell on the inside. So once we're done with that, I see that the wax is cool enough that I can peel it off of the mold. I will clean up the top of the mold here, and then I can start the second pour. So I'm stepping out of the screen, getting the pot, and here's pour number 2. Again, I'm going to fill it all the way up to the top to make sure there's no seams or lines on the edge of the mold. And I'm strengthening the first layer, creating an outside shell that I can then pour out the wax and let that harden up and keep my wax hot. Go on to step number 3. This is pour number 3. Each time we pour the wax in and let it adhere to the walls of the inside of the mold that I'm using, it creates a little bit thicker of a shell, and then I don't leave it in there long enough to get completely hard. The microcrystalline wax is just barely above the melting point, so it doesn't get too hot for the mold, and it cools down rather quickly. I did cut out a couple of the scenes where we're just waiting for the wax to cool down. So once I have 4 layers, 5 layers in there, when I fill it all the way up, you can see there in the pot where it's starting to solidify next to the edges. So once I have those layers all the way cool, then the next step will be to pour wax in and then rotate mold so I can get all of the edges all the way up to the bottom of the mold, which is what we're pouring the wax into. So this hole that you see in the top is actually the bottom of the sculpture. So I start rotating it around, make sure I get all the edges and get it all the way back up to the top. I'm only pouring about half of the mold wax into it, so I can rotate it around and make sure I get all of the edges all the way around. That'll capture all of the detail from the mold into wax. So keep watching, and I'll go through this about 10 times until I have a thick enough shell made up out of the wax that it'll be strong enough that I can take it out of the mold and I can start wax chasing, which will be the next step after this. once I have all of the wax in the sculpture that I want, I use this tray here to pick up the remaining wax and let it cool down into blocks that I can just easily throw back into the pot, or I can use them as sprues, or I can use them as the base of a sprue button, and I'll show you that in the next video, where I will take those and melt them together. Here is a picture of the microcrystalline wax that I've been using. So the next step, I will bring it back in when we unmold our sculpture. Thank you for watching.